Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 1, Chapter 2, Live a Little. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Standing together, all side by side, stood a bruised and scraped up Void and Jida next to a dark matter, muck-covered Joby and one nervous Jay, all within none other than Nock's mayoral office. This office was no different to any other politician's. Lounging quarters, basic walls, large windows, a big desk with a massive figure behind it. Or rather, this time a small figure. Looking back at Void and the rest with confused, annoyed eyes, Nock Rogers, who was now wearing a deep maroon-colored suit, shook his head while clacking his right-hand metal fingers atop the desk. Adjusting his antenna-head-connected glasses, the small mayor sat back in his seat and began to speak in a tired set of words. So, let me get this straight. You not only managed to destroy a city block, but you also allowed for one of Aurora's worst to escape? Jay! Nock reinstated the events from the morning, leaving the smaller spark to look up with a sense of regret in his heart. I didn't mean to, Uncle Nock. Really? Jay whimpered as Jida approached and placed a hand upon her son's shoulder, warming it up to hopefully calm his nerves. I have no doubt that you didn't mean to, kiddo, but Jesus, look at this! Nock expressed with a worried flare in his tone as he projected a hologram of the city block from his now red-colored headpiece. As the images appeared, a side-by-side comparison arose, revealing the state of actual damage for Jay to see. All the buildings in the vicinity had lost their windows, and foundations had shuddered to near crumble. 3 of the convict carts lay sprawled across the road, rubble, debris, injured and the like all scattered. It was a mess, a pure disaster as one would call it. Listen everyone, you especially Jay. If this kind of recklessness continues on, it's going to be a lot harder to endorse your actions within the public eye. Like, how do I tell them that their taxes are going into reconstruction of a 12-year-old's power blast? Nock asked in a tired breath before leaning on the desk and pinching the skin in between his eyes. You don't. Simple as that. Joby retorted with a small grin, leaving Jida to nudge her shoulder in response. Joby, she quietly boasted with a small roll in her eyes. Listen, I apologize if this comes off as the hard truth, but you really messed up, kiddo. Big time. Nock expressed with tired eyes as his emotions began to spill out in the wrong way. Messed up? That's a bit of an understatement. Joby chimed in while wiping a glob of goo off her right horn. She was tired as well, speaking from an annoyed perspective like Nock, and not taking into account of Jay's side of the story. In silence, both Void and Jida listened in shock as the other two began to really get on Jay's back. They understood that Nock had a lot on his plate, and Joby was common with mood swings. But as Void turned his eyes back down upon his son, he saw both his mouth quivering and body shaking, eyes welling with tears. In that moment, Void saw himself, back when he was young and on his own, scared and confused, trying to do what was right to only face ridicule and fear from just trying to do a good thing. Although what Jay did was bad in result, his intentions were in the realm of good. All he needed was a guiding hand for the future, and Void figured it was time to start now in a positive light, as opposed to a negative one. That's quite enough! The older spark boasted before approaching Nock's desk, raising his fist and slamming it upon its wooden top, startling everyone within the room. With a small yelp, Nock leapt back into his chair from Void's sudden aggression. The spark's eyes pulsated a deep shade of blue as he glared on with a protective stare. Even Jay was a tad shocked to his father's sudden actions. Jay made a mistake. Void almost growled as Nock bit his tongue from his friend's tone. One that will help him learn. Turning, Void looked at his son with caring, now fading blue eyes that held the aura of understanding within. And one that will guide him through. The father finished before raising his hand out for his boy. However, Jay merely glanced at his metal palm, wiped his tears with a sniffle, and turned to leave the room. Brushing off his mother and storming past Joby, Jay left through the office doors and warped away to who knew where, leaving the rest of his family numb to the departure. Sighing and lowering his hand, Void watched as the doors slowly shut and listened in as the room fell silent. God damn it. I didn't mean to, I didn't intend to come off like that. Nock regretfully stated as he sat back upon his seat and adjusted his glasses. Yeah, same here. Sorry. Joby replied while Jida crossed her arms in a silent thought. Mayor Rogers, do you have a minute? The voice of Jet audibly came as the robot entered through the large doors. The TV screen bot hadn't changed at all within the last 12 years, but was now more or less a security figure for Nock, who sighed in response. Tapping his mechanical fingers once more, Nock gave a begrudging look and hopped off his chair. Walking around, he adjusted a black bow tie around his neck and looked up to his taller family members. Do what you gotta do. I'll cover the damages and tell Jay I'm sorry. Really sorry. Nock asked before nodding down and leaving to follow Jet. You can tell him that yourself. Void replied as the doors to the office closed, leaving him and his girls alone in silence, and wondering what they should do in regards of Jay. First things first, they had to find him. Jay! With his hands cupped up to his mouth, Void both walked and shouted through the woodland backyard of his home turf in a vain hope to find his son. For the last 3 hours, Void, Jida, and Joby scoured their son's most common visiting spots, all in an effort to find him. They had searched at the school, his favorite restaurant, and now they continued on with the great outdoors of their home, his large backyard, as one would say. Are you sure he'd be around here? Jida asked Void through a telepathic message, leaving her husband to wordily shrug. He has to be. You guys keep searching the riverside. I think I have a hunch on where he could be at. Void replied as he brushed aside a large bush to continue forward. Are you talking about the treehouse? Jida asked with a hint of curiosity in her tone. The treehouse. Void returned as he marched onwards through the woods. It was now late into the afternoon, for the sun was heading for the horizon's crest, leaving the sky to appear as a mixture of both blues and slight pinks. The trees above Void's head also gave off a calm and serene impression, while the skylight above partially beamed down from in between the leaves. This kind of environment left Void feeling rather at peace, minus it all. When around an array of vast and natural life, Sparks always found themselves to be in a state of ease, as their bodies naturally flowed and enlightened to the natural world. If Jay was anywhere, he would be here, Void thought. Coming upon a fallen over tree, the older Spark curled its form with a grunt, before looking upwards and finding what he had been looking for. Resting in a medium-sized tree stood an old treehouse that was crafted for Joby back when she was a little girl. It was box-shaped, held square, paneless windows, and a triangle roof that had caved in at one side. The wood had rotted to a natural green and moss shade, while even a few nails stuck out at the sides. It wasn't the most pretty sight in the world, but Jay and his buddies used this hunk of junk for hangouts. If his kid was anywhere else, it would be here. Jay? Void questioned aloud as he stood below the treehouse and eyed its rope ladder that dangled in the small wind. Jay? Buddy? You up there? Void asked as he continued to stare up at the old wooden structure. For a good few seconds, there was nothing but silence and blowing leaves, having Void to think that maybe he wasn't up there after all. However, all that changed when the Sparklet's small voice called back down. Yeah. Jay sounded tired and drained. His once snippy and happy attitude from that morning was now replaced with a dour and ashamed tone that left his father feeling sad on the inside. May I come up? The younger Novisan asked as he tilted his head to the right side. Yeah. Jay replied in that same tone of voice that Void truly hated to hear. Biting the inside of his cheek, the older spark approached the rope ladder and began to slowly ascend its form, going up about 15 feet or so into the air. As Void reached the caved-open entrance, he peeked his oval-shaped eyes inside, only to see one of the worst sights a parent could bear. Huddled in the treehouse's right side corner, Jay sat with both his legs tucked into his chest while his arms held him in place. His eyes were open, but lowered into a puffy red stare. He had clearly been crying for a good while, and had hidden away from everyone to spare them from seeing it. With his own eyes furrowing into a depressed stare, Void gently pulled himself into the treehouse and approached his son in a non-disciplined-like manner. Hey. Void greeted in a softer tone before kneeling down in front of his young boy. Would it be alright if I took a seat? Looking up with only his eyes, Jay quietly nodded his head, giving Void the okay to do as such. Maneuvering his large form around, the older spark sat upon Jay's right side in a cramped manner, clearly having been way too big to fit inside the treehouse. Once settled, the two sparks sat in silence for what had to be a good few seconds. Void wasn't sure on what to say, how to comfort his son in a situation such as this. He hadn't expected something like this to ever happen, yet here they were. I really messed up. Jay broke the silence in a tired tone, while looking away from his father in regret. You made a mistake, Void replied as he turned his head to look upon his boy. Yeah, a big one. The sparkler returned as he rested his head upon his knees. I should have listened to you. I got overconfident and I screwed everything up. I destroyed so much and I let Shao get away. I thought I could do it. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm really sorry. Reaching his left arm out, Void wrapped his large hand around Jay's shoulder and pulled him into a side hug, resulting in the young boy resting his head upon his father's side. And I forgive you. Blinking with stunned eyes, Jay glanced up to his dad as he looked back down with an understanding stare. What? Why? I don't know what I did back there. I hurt people. Why are you forgiving me for that? Jay questioned as Void took in a breath and stared forward towards the trees outside. One, because that blast you released was a natural reaction we sparks have to danger. And two, it's because I've been in your shoes before. I understand the feeling of trying to help, but ruining everything in the process. Thinking you can do something when you're just not ready for it. Believe me, I know. And so does your mother. Void revealed to Jay, leaving the little spark to silently think. In my younger years, when I forced myself to help those in need, I made a lot of mistakes. Big mistakes. But without mistakes, Jay, there wouldn't be a thing called learning. Void continued as his mind flashed to fighting the glitch on his own. Truthfully, Void had never told his son about his quest in stopping those monsters, how their people died. He had told Jay about his journey through Ophis, stopping Jack, bits about his brother, but never the glitched or the true ways people were destroyed. In a way, Void had always found that to be a touchy subject, and wasn't comfortable in sharing that story to Jay at such a young age. So, whenever he mentioned that era of his life, the older spark did his best to tiptoe around the topic in general. But Jay would always ask for answers. Dad, why exactly did you choose to help people? Why do you really do this? Why are you so forgiving towards me? Jay questioned while wiping his tears in a shaken manner. Why can't you just bring yourself to scold me when I clearly deserve it? Looking on for a long moment, Void took in a breath and stared off to the side, thinking on what to exactly say in that moment. But soon enough, the right words came spilling on through. Jay, all you need to know is that when the world kicks you down, you just gotta get back up and keep moving. The story of what happened in my past it's one you'll hear when you're older. But all you need to know is that it has taught me to look at the world through two lenses. Void expressed as he and his son locked eyes. I forgive you because I've been you. Your mother has been you, even Joby. But don't let that make you think what happened was okay. Because it wasn't. You made a mistake. But from mistakes, we learn to be better. Void continued before gently standing to his feet and looking down to his son. What happened? That power you released. That's exactly why we need the train. You have abilities that go beyond me and your mother's, Jay. If we don't understand your nature, if you don't understand, then more city blocks and more could be destroyed without the right kind of control. Void went on before reaching his hand down. Listen, me and your mother, we will both teach and train you to the best of our abilities. We can start tomorrow. But you gotta promise us to do something else in return. Void beckoned as Jay gently took his father's hand and stood as well. That being? The Sparklet asked as Void gave a warm smile. Live a little. Me and your mother, we never got to have a proper childhood. And we don't want you to follow in our footsteps. Not like that. Don't stress about the dangers in the world. Stress about making plans. Focusing on having fun. I'm talking to that girl I know you like. Void asked of his son, with a tender stare of compassion in his heart. You're still a kid. And you only get to be it once. Don't waste it. The fatherly spark finished before taking his son by the arm and pulling him into a hug. I have no doubt that you'll make an incredible spark one day. Perhaps even the best of what remains. But only time and guidance will help you reach that future. You understand, buddy? Void questioned, leaving Jay the nod in a tired sigh. I understand. Raising his hands forward, Void wiped Jay's tears and then scooped him up into his bulky metal arms, allowing for the young boy to relax against their shared essence. Together, both father and son's horns ignited a similar purple shade as Void warmed himself up into a comforting pulse. I love you, Jay. Void stated before kissing his son's forehead. I love you too, Dad. Turning towards the treehouse door, Void gently leapt from its form and lashed his hand around one of its existing wooden planks. Using this, Void elongated his arm and slowly descended to the grass below. Once landfall was made, he retracted his limb to a normal state and began marching their way back towards the cabin. Found him. I'm heading home now. I'll meet you guys there. The spark called telepathically to Jida, all while Jay clung to his dad like a koala. What would you like to eat for dinner tonight, bud? Void then asked, as the sun shimmered down upon the both of them. Spaghetti would be pretty good, if that's okay with you. Jay replied, leaving Void the smirk with an accepting nod. Couldn't agree more, kiddo. Couldn't agree more. "10:30 p.m. read Jay's alarm clock as the young spark laid in his bed and just stared upwards at the ceiling. His room was as dark as the night itself. No lights, no TV, no phone. It was just the quiet void mixed with the starry night sky from outside. Although late, Jay severely struggled to fall asleep. The events from earlier continued to eat at him, even when his father and now mother and cousin forgave him. At the end of the day, he had caused a lot of damage, hurt a few people, and allowed for Shallow to escape off to who knew where. Idiot. He told himself again, before pressing both of his hands upon his face and pulling down. With a defeated groan, Jay dragged both his lips and eyelids downwards, before letting go and flopping them back into place. The young boy was now mixed for the most part. He didn't know he could use such a powerful ability like that. An energy blast that both destroys and warps things. It was terrifying. The way his body felt too. In a way, Jay felt as though to have been transcending once the blast was released, like his body was about to head somewhere else. Whether it be death or the unknown, Jay wasn't one to find out just yet. All he really needed was a good night's rest. Shutting his eyes, Jay rolled to be on his side and attempted to get himself to sleep. He had a busy weekend ahead. Not only was there going to be his first steps in the training, there was also Uncle Knock's speech rally for a possible third term. Jay also had plans to hang out with his friends that shortly approaching Saturday, the group at their standard meetup location. The Trash Pack, he and his friends called themselves. It was a name given to them by a group of bullies, but one they turned from a negative into a positive. The only one who didn't find it as nice was Florence, but that was just her nature. Maybe tomorrow will be better, Jay told himself while trying to force himself to sleep. It was only 3 seconds after, however, when the spark heard a knocking on his window. Shooting up with a purple flare in his horns, Jay craned his sights at the window and caught the sight of something, or rather, an unexpected someone outside it. There, waving her hand in a friendly gesture, was Maple. What the? Jay asked as he quietly slipped out of his bed and tiptoed to the window. Wearing a black shirt with white shorts, the small spark expressed a baffled stare, all while Maple smiled in return. The young girl was now wearing a fluffy black jacket that was accompanied by a pair of dark blue sweatpants. Her gooped-up hair had been combed down a tad, looking a bit longer without the bow atop it. If anything, the Matter Girl seemed to have just crawled out of bed herself, given the slight tired look in her orange irises. Maple, what are you doing here? Jay whispered through the glass, leaving Maple to read his lips with ease. Opening her mouth, the little Lewins breathed out some air upon the glass and began to write a message for Jay. May I come in, she wrote, having to do it backwards on her end. Looking from his friend and then to his closed door, Jay knew everyone was asleep, and he himself was curious to why his friend was even there. Nodding with slight hesitancy, Jay approached the window's top and unlatched its form. Yet, before he could even open it, Maple made her way inside. Pressing herself against the window's crevice, the young girl was able to fully flatten herself and gush her way inside like a water leak. Whoa! Jay quietly stuttered as he stood back and watched as her form pushed itself in from the outside to be inside, looking like a flat character that's suddenly going three-dimensional.
Thanks,
she expressed with glee, leaving Jay a tad shocked to her entrance. I forgot you could do that, the sparklet stated with stunned eyes while looking his friend up and down. What brings you? Before Jay could finish, Maple maneuvered forward and wrapped her arms around the young spark, causing him to blush a glow of purple in surprise.
Because I heard what happened. I'm very thankful that you're okay.
Silently, Jay raised his arms up and returned the embracing gesture, allowing for his horns to lower in light strength. I messed up, Maple. I screwed it all up. The little spark finally spoke as the two friends pulled back from one another.
Yeah, my mom and dad caught me up to speed. I'm really sorry about all that, Jay.
Sitting down, the spark and matter being rested upon the bedside. Maple held the look of complete understanding towards Jay, while the spark himself didn't know what to think. I thought I could do it, you know? I know I never shut up about it. I just wanted to help people, to prove to my mom and dad that I was capable. Now I don't know if that's possible. Tilting her head and kicking her legs over his bedside, Maple contemplated on if she should try to comfort her friend more, or just cut to the chase. Choosing the latter, she gave a tiny smile and turned.
Hey, I came here for another reason too. That is, if you want to clear your head in a more open space. I know it's late, but...
Scooting closer, Maple smiled upon Jay with a nervous tone before continuing.
I know a spot in the city. A very nice spot that helps me clear my head when I'm under stress. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to go there with me tonight.
Maple asked with a stare of sparkling orange eyes, leaving Jay to think for a moment. He was already in hot water, he reasoned. Would it be best to leave in the middle of the night? Would he dare wake up his parents? But then, his father's words from earlier called back to him like a wave of confidence. Live a little, Void said within, making Jay take a breath and decide. You know what? Why not? I still need to grab my backpack off a rooftop anyway. My phone and stuff's in there, Jay expressed before getting off the bed and walking to his closet. As he approached, he illuminated his horns to be a light source, helping him with taking out a dark blue sweater.
Awesome! In case you're wondering, I used the nearby location station as per standard. I'll meet you outside.
Maple quietly and excitedly squealed as she reapproached the window and proceeded to slip on back through. Pulling on some sweatpants and his shoes, Jay took in a long breath and repeated those same 3 words to himself once again. Live a little. Brushing himself off, the young spark spun around while dragging his foot and warped to be outside and following behind his best friend.